In this video, I'm going to break down the symbolism of sight, the Eye of Sauron, and at the end, how it relates to our lives. Hey guys, this is S.C. Nielsen, empowering you with the tools that you need to read, write, and think story. And today we're going to be talking about the Eye of Sauron and the symbolism of sight in the very first Secrets of Symbolism video. I just want to start off this video with letting you know I am not a Silmarillion scholar. I'm using the Lord of the Rings as a common language to discuss ideas that are going to make sense instead of me referencing more arcane texts. The Lord of the Rings is, a shared cultural language that we're going to be able to use to access common images, and so that's why we're using the Eye of Sauron as a middle ground for this video. To catch you up real quick to the part of the narrative that I want. So to catch you up real quick to the part of the narrative that I want you to focus on, we have Denethor, the character Denethor. He's in the movies. He's not actually the king of Gondor, but he is the keeper of it. He's kind of like the king regent. He's basically the king, but in title, he's not the king. And he's secretly using this piece of technology. Okay, so it's a piece of magic, but it's the same pattern. It's the same type of thing that technology is. And this is another video, but magic and technology, the line between the two is not so clear. So he's using a technology, he's using a form of magic called a palantir. And again, Tolkien scholars, give me a break on the pronunciations, to probe Sauron's strength. So he's this king regent up in his walled city of Gondor, and he's using the palantir, which is like an indestructible crystal ball that is used to communicate and see events in other parts of the world, whether past or future. It's kind of like a classic crystal ball that you've seen in other stories, I'm sure. And Denethor gets these visions and gets this overall impression of Sauron's overwhelming force, that he sees all around, and he sees that Sauron is basically going to win. Okay, he's got all of these guys. He's got all of this tremendous force, and something happens that's really interesting, and that's that he loses the battle before it even begins. And when Gandalf gets there, he finds that in fact, the whole city has already kind of given up, and that's of course because the head of the city, the king regent himself, has given up. And so Gandalf, being Gandalf, is kind of scolding him, is saying this and that and the other thing. But the key to remember here is that Denethor's spirit has been broken. He's lost a spiritual battle, and seeing the story from the outside, like we are, we can watch the movie, we can rewatch the movie. We have a relationship to fiction, to fictional tales, that's very similar to God's relationship to our reality, where God exists outside of our reality, right? And so time as we experience it is not how he experiences time. And the same goes for us and our fictional tales. Not to say that we're fictional, but it's like a fractal relationship that goes down. And so when we look at a story, we kind of understand it from a God-like perspective. And so we understand, that's a long way of me saying that we understand that actually Denethor's side, he ends up trying to kill his own son, and not a good end for Denethor. But they win, right? They hold Gondor. The good guys win, okay? And so he was wrong, right? He couldn't predict the future. He thought he could. He thought that with the power of this palantir, this technology, that he could peer into the future and see what was going to happen. And it's not that the technology did not allow him, the magic did not allow him to peer into the future. It did. But it's that his understanding of that raw data was flawed. And so using this story from Lord of the Rings, there's a lot that we can take out from it. I mean, first, the palantir being technology, right? And so technology, magic, let's say the increasing ability for humanity to exert our will into the creation, into the world. This ability that technology gives us, it increases our power. It increases our ability to see the world. But, and there's a big but, of course, is that it simultaneously lessens our ability to perceive the world. And so we can see more stuff, but it becomes harder and harder and harder to make sense of it. And that's why in the case of Denethor, he couldn't make sense of it. He drew the completely false and wrong conclusion, as we can see being readers of the story. And so there's this dichotomy set up between two worlds, okay? There's the world of data, and the world of data is really a shadow world. It's a world that can be infinitely magnified or shrunk, right, at any one of its component parts. And we see this idea in our modern time with subatomic particles, and basically as our microscopes get stronger, we start to uncover these worlds that we never could have imagined existed. And so you can take something that's so small, and with this advanced technology, with these advanced microscopes, which it's no coincidence that they are fundamentally multiple pieces of glass. It's like a glass fixture. Of course, electron microscopes, different technology. I get that, but the symbolism is still there, right? The crystal ball and the microscope, as well as the telescope, right, are all like connected by this singular vision. So we can peer as deep as we want into this world, and we can peer with telescopes, right, as far away as we want into the world. And what ends up happening is that our perception is annihilated by the sheer scale. We can't make heads or tails of any of this. We throw these narratives and these stories on it to try to understand it, to try and put handles on it. But do we really understand what's going on? Right? And depending on what you believe, that might be debatable or not. So the world of perception is, let's call it the true world. This is the world that we interact with. And so once again, we have this dichotomy of the shadow world of data and the true world of perception. And so this leads us into the idea of the blind man who can truly see. I don't think we have that type of a character in The Lord of the Rings, but this is a very common trope. You're going to see this everywhere. There's the blind monk who is this amazing martial artist, and it seems like he's lost his ability to see the world, but that has somehow not just sharpened his other senses, but given him an ability to see something that others simply can't see. And this might seem crazy, this might seem tangential, but this brings us right into Cinderella. I know. Lord of the Rings, Cinderella. How do they relate? Well, well, there's this moment, great moment in Cinderella, as you probably know, but if you don't, there's this moment where the fairy godmother comes in to give Cinderella the clothes that she needs to attend the ball. And so she waves her wand, and Cinderella gets this wonderful dress and the stagecoach and the means to get to the ball. But the catch is, by midnight, she needs to skedaddle because all that stuff will disappear. And there's a really interesting thing going on here, where the fairy godmother does not obscure with clothing, right? So clothing, as we use it, is an obscurity. It obscures, right? It covers us. It hides the parts of us that are vulnerable, that we don't want to show, that we almost kind of rather don't exist in some instances. I probably don't need to tell you anymore about bodily insecurities, body image problems. But that's not what the fairy godmother's doing, right? She's not covering up Cinderella's problems with a nice dress so that the prince will, marry her. Instead, the fairy godmother is using her magic, right? Technology, right? Using her magic and using clothes in this way that's flipped. She's using clothes to reveal the true nature of Cinderella. Because Cinderella was being obscured by her evil stepsisters and her stepmother, and they're hiding her away, and they're keeping her in the dark to increase her own daughter's chances of becoming the prince's beloved. Though, of course, we understand that she's actually worsening their chances, and she's actually refining Cinderella, like in the same way that a diamond is made through pressure. Cinderella is having this process where she's being refined, and it's this refinement that gets revealed. This true nature gets revealed by the fairy godmother to be viewed by everyone in the story, but also the reader. So there's this wonderful moment, and that moment, I guess we could call it the Tolkienian eucatastrophe, but that moment's in a lot of fairy tales and a lot of stories, and that's what I want us to understand about Cinderella, because it all ties into this final idea of how this applies to us. How does this apply to us? Well, the palantir, the microscope, the telescope, they all have a similarity with our screens. Okay, our screens, even though they're not glass, they are windows. Windows into the world. We can see the past. We can see parts of the future, depending on where you look on the internet. And we can see all around the world. And what's really interesting is that the only thing that reliably tells us, the users of the internet, whether one video or article or image, when that piece of media was created or published, is just like a piece of text. That's all it is. And if I had the control of a website, I could easily go in and alter that date. I could alter it easily. And so our whole perception of history and time is false. It's manipulatable. And that's what's happening to us now. We're getting an overload of data from the internet. Okay, it's all pouring in, and we can't make heads or tails of it because the whole world is being magnified and magnified and more and more and more, to the point where our stories are breaking down. They're not able to handle this raw data. And so our perception is failing us. And, it'd be one thing if the ecosystem of the internet was small, like it used to be. It used to be really small. And back then it wasn't really a problem. But now the raw amount of data is annihilating our ability to perceive the world by the sheer amount of it, the sheer scale of the data we have access to. is robbing us of our ability to actually perceive the world. And remember, right, the world of data is the shadow world. It's a world that you can become easily lost in and confused in and unable to understand. And the true world is the world that is perceived. And so with this dichotomy in mind, when we go on the internet and we see this world of raw data, we're getting lost in this false shadow world. And so because of this, people are reverting back to simple narratives to describe their lives, their place in it, and where we're going in the future. And of course, this is myth, this is religion, but we're seeing the strength of these narratives increase and the lack of a unifying narrative. And so all of these smaller ones are taking hold. We're seeing this kind of explosion of cults, really. Because there is no sufficient technique to analyze all of this data, simple narratives are what we use. And really, that is the best technique to analyze a tremendous amount of data, is to use a simple narrative and a simple story that you filter everything through. And so the key insight I want you to take away from this video is that this is why I've created this channel and why I want you to understand the language of story. You see, providing people with more data is not going to do anything. We are all already overloaded with data, day in and day out, information over and over and over again. And as a result, facts are dead. Facts are dead. Data does not matter. It doesn't matter how many studies there are. It doesn't matter how many scientific studies. How many points of data that you present for your argument. That's not what people are listening to any longer. It's all about story. And going forward from 2021 on into this future, the only way that you're going to be able to communicate to someone, the only way that you're going to be able to get them to understand is through story. Reading, writing, and thinking story. All right, guys, so that was the first Secrets of Symbolism video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you're at the end of this video, I think you probably did. And so if you got value out of this video, please don't forget to subscribe, turn on the notifications, thumbs up, and give me a comment, anything to increase the visibility of this video so we can build a community around thinking, reading, writing, story. And so if you got value out of this video, please put a comment down below, and I will see you in the next one.